This is Paranormal Geek Official, where the truth can be stranger than fiction.
Welcome back to Paranormal Geek. Returning guest and becoming a favorite guest of mine is Randy Jaye. He's a historian. He's been on many podcasts. He's doing a podcast himself. So keep an eye, lookout on that. Today is the 8 haunted cemeteries in Pennsylvania. I'm very excited for this and we're going to be enjoying that today. I did change the background a little bit. It's a little bit more laid back, so you guys get your coffee, your snacks, all that Halloween candy you probably just had and enjoy the podcast. Okay. Pennsylvania has a rich history of haunted cemeteries. For centuries, sightings of ghosts and apparitions, orbs, blurry spirits, unexplained entities, close encounters with the poltergeist, and other paranormal phenomena have been reported in many cemeteries around Pennsylvania. This podcast explores 8 cemeteries located in Pennsylvania that have reportedly experienced various forms of paranormal phenomenon. Interestingly, the majority of cemeteries are not considered to be haunted. This can be attributed to the fact that many believe that most people buried there are satisfied in their eternal resting place. However, many spirits, mediums, believe that the spirits of some people can be restless, refuse to succumb to death, and linger in the world of the living as apparitions. The theories why spirits linger in the world of the living are unfinished business on the living side, such as revenge or justice. A sudden demise that left a person's soul obviously to their own death, or oblivious to their own death, The spirit of deceased person might have a message to deliver to the living. Their interred bodies were not properly identified, were not treated with dignity. The spirit of the deceased person might have a message to deliver to the living. Their intended bodies were not properly identified, or were not treated with dignity. This podcast guest is Randy Jaye, and he has recently researched and nominated 5 properties that have been successfully added onto the National Register of Historic Places. He is the author of several recent history books, including Florida Probation, Corruption, Defiance, and Tragedy, published in 2024. He also writes articles of historic journals, local newspapers, magazines, and has appeared on several radio shows and PBS documentaries. He earned both a master's degree and bachelor's degree from California University. Welcome back, Randy.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm enjoying this already. So the first one we're going to talk about, or the first cemetery, is Gettysburg National Cemetery, which is very famous here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the Gettysburg National Cemetery is, by many accounts, one of the most haunted cemeteries in the whole country, not just in the state of Pennsylvania. And why that is the 3-day horrific Battle of Gettysburg, which incidentally was July 1st through 3rd, 1863, was the most bloodiest and tragic battle in American history. There was more than 50,000 casualties right there in little town of Gettysburg. Some of the common paranormal activity reported here at Gettysburg include the distant and echoing sounds of phantom drums and musket fire. Ghostly apparitions are often seen standing around gravestones. There are also very many eerie sightings of rotting corpses and decaying corpses with skeletal features about them. Very, very creepy sightings around there for many decades now. And, so like I said, the Gettysburg National Cemetery, definitely one of the most haunted cemeteries anywhere in the United States. I've been there several times. In fact, I've been there many times, and I have never seen any ghosts there. In fact, I've never seen a ghost in my life. So hopefully one day I will be able to see one. But up until this point, No, I have not been able to see any. And Gettysburg would be a great place to go if you're trying to make contact with the paranormal.
Yes, I've seen a lot of videos, a lot of famous ones actually too, like Ghost Adventures and upcoming shows have actually supposedly caught what they call ghosts and apparitions. It's a very famous place. I would love to go there one day.
Not far from where you're at. It's probably about an hour and a half drive from Lebanon. Not far at all.
No. The next place or the next cemetery we're talking about is Laurel Hill Cemetery, and this is in Philly or Philadelphia.
Yeah, it has over 77,000 burials, and there's paranormal investigators frequently on site doing ghost searches and ghost hunts and so forth. One of the strangest burials in the Laurel Hill Cemetery is that of Mary Peterson. She died in 1912. She actually had her heart removed from her body and buried near her first husband, while the rest of her body was buried near her second husband. So a few notable hauntings include the stories of Martha Drennan and Maurice Fagan. Martha Drennan was a daughter of Laurel Hill's original caretaker, and on a November day back in 1903, she was seen heading towards the Laurel Hill train station, never to be seen live again. So in March of 1904, they discovered her headless body in the Delaware Bay. Martha's family traveled from New Jersey and confirmed it was her body. Her remains were returned to Laurel Hill Cemetery and buried, but there was no headstone or marker because the family at that time could not afford one. Since then, there has been a marker placed there because many people were hearing screams of anguish around her graves. So they decided to put a gravestone there, hopefully to squelch some of these different stories of hauntings and so forth coming near her grave. So another mystery about who took Martha's life really remains unsolved. It's a crazy story. As for Maurice Fagan, a note left to his sister tells a story of suffering, and Maurice was served in the Civil War, and he returned plagued by terrible head injury that plagued him for the rest of his life. His pain was so intense it tormented him, and they couldn't really do anything medically for him. So he wrote a letter explaining that he was soon going to join his departed family at Laurel Hill, and he was found dead in his family plot in the cemetery with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. He was desperate to end his life, and he did it there. Since then, many visitors report hearing gunshots and throughout the cemetery, and all of this stuff is unexplained at this point. But that's a common experience in the Laurel Hill Cemetery. As people are walking around, even in the daytime, they hear the echoing of gunshots all around in there. One of the craziest hauntings of all Pennsylvania cemeteries.
Wow, that's interesting. Going back to the one we just talked about, Gettysburg, they've heard a lot of gunshots as well. I've seen videos, but it's interesting. Our third cemetery that we will talk about is Coultersville Cemetery in McKeesport, PA. I'm terrible at saying these names.
Yeah, this is a cemetery that's tucked away in McKeesport, and on the land where the Coultersville Cemetery sits today has a tragic, really tragic history about it. Before the cemetery was there, it was used as an orphanage, and one night in the 19th century, the orphanage burnt completely to the ground. It trapped all of the children in there and other people that were there and killed everybody inside there, right? So the orphanage was never rebuilt, and then they placed the Coultersville Cemetery there in its place, offering a resting place for a lot of the local people in that general area. So while people are in the cemetery, they take a moment, they just start to listen, right? And the stillness in the evening, a lot of people hear children's voices and tiny footsteps getting closer and closer. And they turn around and look, and there's never anybody there. And some people have reported the faint footsteps, voices, and cries of the children, presumably from all these dead orphans. And another crazy thing that happens in this cemetery is the sightings of flames and smoke billowing up through the cemetery area. And when they go to look for the source of this smoke and these flames, they never find any burnt wood or anything. It's just a mystery as to how this smoke and these flames appear, and there's no confirmed source for them. So one of the craziest and spookiest occurrences is a lot of people report as they're driving out of the cemetery, they look on their car windows and there's handprints of children on the exterior part of their car windows, but yet they didn't see anybody leaning on their car. So this is a real crazy place to go. If you're interested in ghosts and hauntings, this cemetery definitely has a lot of things working for it.
Is this the one? I think this is the one I've heard of before. I love the paranormal, you can tell. Where people have gone, like you just said, and they go up with the car, they put their car in neutral and they put a lot of like either baby powder or flour on the back of the car to see if the kids will push or like they'll leave marks or something. I don't know what place I've heard or seen that, but this sounds like the place.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories, but not at the Coultersville Cemetery. But again, when you go and you start doing research on suspected hauntings in cemeteries in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of them. I mean, there's way over 100 of them without even doing a deep dive into the research. So this particular podcast, we just picked out 8 of what we think is some of the more interesting ones around the state.
Okay. That one's fascinating. I love that one. I might pop over. The Moonshine Church Cemetery in Indian Town Gap, which I've been before, and I would love to go back one day. This one is the Moonshine Church Cemetery, Indian Town Gap in PA, which I've been there before and I love. The most commonly reported eerie experience at the Moonshine Church Cemetery is car engines mysteriously stopping in the area. However, many unexplained paranormal noises, ghost sightings have been reported here for many years.
Yeah, I mean, we've on this previous podcast, we discussed the Moonshine Church Cemetery a couple of times because there's a lot of odd, paranormal, eerie hauntings going on in that area. And when you go out there at night and you just look around, it's one of the most eeriest places in that general area up there in central Pennsylvania. A lot of people wonder if the cemetery was named after White Lightning Moonshine whiskey. Well, it was not. It was actually named after a family named Moonshine, and many of that family is actually buried in the cemetery. The land for the church and the cemetery was donated by Henry Moonshine. He was born in 1760 and died in 1836. So that's how the Moonshine Church got its odd name. The small church itself is fairly new. It was built in 1961. It was a replacement for the original structure, which was destroyed by fire the previous year. However, the church today, the church was built in 1961. There's still very, very eerie presence about it when you go and look at it, especially in the evening or in the dusk or the dawn or dusk time. There's a legend of a girl who went inside the church and said the Lord's Prayer backwards. She walked outside and got struck by lightning and died. It's said that the area is haunted by a headless horseman who, according to regional lore, has been spotted riding up and down the area for decades. And this is a common occurrence in a lot of sightings all over the world, paranormal activity, the idea of a headless horseman. So we have one right here in Lebanon, Pennsylvania as well. There's also been a ghost out there called the Red Devil. It's an Indian spirit, so a lot of people say, and several spirits of Native Americans have been reported roaming around the cemetery. And by the way, for most people that are interested in ghost hunting and ghost watching and so forth, this is the most feared ghost of all, the Red Devil. And then, of course, the local legend of the Blue-Eyed Six. The victim, Joe Raber, is actually buried there. And there's been a lot of ghost stories out there for over 100 years now. The most common is a pair of blue eyes that float around his grave. And also at the top, looking at the steeple, people claim they've seen a pair of blue eyes floating around out there as well. So yes, the Moonshine Church Cemetery is definitely a place to go and visit if you've never been there, or a place to go revisit if you have been there. It's definitely an interesting cemetery.
Yeah, yes, it is. And then our next one is Strasburg Cemetery, in Strasburg, PA. And the Strasburg Cemetery's most notorious gravestone is simply engraved Annie K. Gander, December 8, 1856 to May 28, 1918. The ghost of Annie K. Gander has been reported in both the Strasburg Cemetery and nearby Gander Mansion, and is one of Pennsylvania's most haunted stories.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of national, ghost story programs and books and all that mention the Strasburg Cemetery and the ghost of Annie Gander. So the Gander Mansion was built in 1905 by Annie Gander's brother Benjamin. He was a wealthy railroad man, and when he completed the mansion, he did not let his sister move in. She had to live in a small house across the street from the mansion, and she spent many, many hours gazing out of her windows in this small house at this great Gander Mansion. So Annie's family all died before her, and she was alone, only with a nurse to assist her at the end of her life. And on May 28, 1918, Annie dodged her nurse and boarded a trolley car and disembarked at the nearby Edisonville station. She was seen walking towards the waters of the Pequot Creek, and then she just completely disappeared off the face of the earth. The following day, Annie's body was found floating in the Pequot Creek, and her death was ruled a suicide by drowning. So Annie was buried at the Strasburg Cemetery, and soon afterwards, residents of the area claimed that Annie's restless spirit was haunting their community. It's said that Annie's ghost moved into the Gander Mansion, and she could be heard laughing in a crazy, crackling voice. And interestingly, Annie's laughter can only be heard by men. Women have never heard her laughing. It's only men that hear her laughing in this mansion. So Annie's ghost has also been reported roaming around the grounds of the cemetery. Strange lights in the form of a female figure have been spotted near Annie's grave. That's a common occurrence there. Many visitors to this Strasburg Cemetery note that Annie's headstone is turned at a strange angle from the rest of the family and the family plot. So legend states that Mary, her brother Benjamin's widow, was embarrassed by Annie, so she had her buried at an angle at the edge of the family plot so she wouldn't be completely recognized with the rest of the family. And that's kind of the weirdest story in the Strasburg Cemetery.
Wow, I like that one a lot. I'm very intrigued to go there.
Very, very close to Lebanon. Strasburg is maybe an hour away, if that, 45 minutes. It's very close to where you're at.
Okay, our next one is Hankey, if I'm saying that right, Church Cemetery in Murraysville, PA. According to local folklore, people have experienced the feeling of being touched while on old church grounds, and some say have come into contact with the spirit of a minister who haunts the Hankey Church Road Cemetery nearby the property.
Yeah, this is a very interesting story as well. The Hankey Church Road has become clouded throughout the years with various tales and a haunting legend surrounding this minister who was once reportedly tormenting several members of the Hankey Church sometime around the mid-1800s. So he was not a very, very pleasant or good person. The church was erected in 1817, and this historic church once sat on the grounds and had a very picturesque white picket fence. It was near the entrance of the historic Hankey Cemetery, and it completely burned to the ground back in 1973, so it's completely gone to history. The area where the church once sat so many years ago has a diabolical feeling about it. There's a highly charged active energy that's nearby, what they say is nearly impossible to dismiss. Problematic entities could be the result of these visitors that come, thrill seekers and ghost hunters trespassing into the church with attempts to summon these evil spirits. So there's a lot of people that kind of trespass in there, jump the fence and so forth, and try to conjure up these evil spirits and so forth. Many visitors to the cemetery have witnessed ghosts and spirits that appear in a fog-like mist. The strong smell of strawberries can be detected throughout the summer air. Just through the gate of where the white picket fence was, glowing tombstones can be seen just a few feet from the graves of Daniel and Catherine Best Hankey, where they have been laying at rest since the early 1800s. Nearby, there's a Revolutionary War soldier named Conrad Ludwig, and this is a highly charged area where ghost sightings are usually accompanied by body aches and joint pain. So people that say they experience ghost sightings there typically go home and leave with body aches and joint pain. The sensation of heated skin and watery eyes, similar to that of an allergy attack, are also symptoms of people that have experienced paranormal activity in this area. Paranormal groups have attempted to debunk the supernatural activity that people claim hovers over the Hankey Church Road near the cemetery, but the ghosts there tell a different story.
Wow, that's very interesting. Wow. That's kind of scary that you go home with that body aches and stuff. I mean, I have fibromyalgia, so that's an everyday thing. But that's worrisome. That's scary. People shouldn't be conjuring up spirits. It's not something, unless you're very professional at it, but it's still dangerous. Eerie Cemetery in Erie, PA, located in the middle of the city of Erie, is the 75-acre, 175-year-old Eerie Cemetery. It is a historic treasure. However, it is also one of Pennsylvania's creepiest cemeteries and is widely known for its stories about witches and its vampire legend. Ooh.
Yeah, this cemetery is really odd because it goes beyond the typical paranormal activity, and it goes into the story of witches and vampires as well as some paranormal activity. So definitely an interesting place. So the Erie Cemetery has many old historic gravestones, buildings, and crypts around the cemetery as well. One of the creepiest areas is called the Witches' Circle. And this is an area that is really eerie, as the gravestones are arranged in an actual circle. Two of the gravestones appear to be burnt, and this is where the legend lies. The legend states that the bodies buried beneath these particular two gravestones were witches, and supposedly the stones were burned and turned black when the devil came there to claim the witches' souls. So one of the witches' gravestones also has faint images of human skulls that seem to stare back at you when you look at it. Very creepy, eerie sighting there. The cemetery's spooky Scott Mausoleum was broken into in 1911, and this caused a local panic amongst the Erie's citizens. Scandals followed, and police agencies got involved, and many agencies from around the nation actually went there and investigated this. And after all, what kind of a person would break into a crypt? And it caused a national sensation. The most bizarre story is that of the vampire crypt, which has no names or markers except the prominent V. One story says that a woman named Gertrude Brown owned the crypt, but her body for some reason is not inside there. According to sketchy records, 7 people have been buried and housed inside there over the years. The legend states that one of these 7 was a vampire, but does not identify which one. Apparently, the person who was the vampire died of alcoholism. After this person's death, bodies started showing up in the area, and all of the victims had puncture wounds on their necks with their blood removed. So this vampire legend really grew after the death of this so-called vampire. In the end, it was the cemetery caretaker who discovered what happened, and he actually sealed the crypt up. So as the legend grew, so did people's curiosity. They just had to know if an actual vampire was sealed inside, and the stories say all that who attempted to find out met untimely deaths. There's the story of the Erie Cemetery.
Wait, okay, so if you go and try, all the people that have tried to investigate even more in this cemetery, they've died.
Right, the vampire story. So
Oh,
apparently there was a lot of people that that came back to investigate this vampire story, because you got to remember, after the so-called vampire died, corpses started showing up in the area that had supposedly had bite marks in their neck and had a lot of blood missing, right? So after this, people started to investigate this, and according to the legend, they wound up dying untimely deaths.
oh man, that one's getting me.
So the crazy cemetery with stories of both paranormal, witches, and vampires. One of the most unique cemeteries in Pennsylvania, as
I'm
far as
gonna
stories.
I'm gonna give a little more detail on that. That's funny because not funny, haha, funny weird. Lately, there's been like an upcome of like popularity. I don't know how to say it. It's been getting popular, the vampire thing, because recently on TikTok, there's people that are coming out with their personal experience with so-called vampires, real vampires. So that's interesting, the story.
Yeah, oh yeah. And it's crazy that's right up there in Erie, Pennsylvania, that they have paranormal, witches, and vampires all in this one cemetery, and it must be a creepy place to visit. I've never been.
Yeah, I would like to go there. That's the witches and vampires. It's calling me. And the last and final one is a Harrisburg State Hospital Cemetery in Harrisburg, PA. The Harrisburg State Hospital was built in 1851 and was known as the Pennsylvania State Lunatic Hospital up until 1921. It has creepy underground tunnels, a morgue, and a cemetery that was moved, which contained 230 bodies. No one knows exactly what happened to all the bodies. However, it is reported that many wandering ghosts now haunt the area.
Yes, the Harrisburg State Hospital Cemetery is a pretty interesting place. And, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, mental hospitals were actually called lunatic asylums. So that's where the name lunatic comes from. Pennsylvania State Lunatic Hospital would also been called a lunatic asylum at the time as well. So there are many unmarked graves on the hospital's ground now, right? Because of the way they move these bodies around and disturb the grave sites and all that. Nobody knows where all these different people are buried today. Well, when patients died within the asylum's walls and their family didn't come to claim them, what happened was they just simply went out there and buried them on the hospital grounds at the time. So it's estimated that there are 2 burial sites on the hospital grounds, and the hospital grounds contains 295 acres. So a fairly large area. So 150 years of history as a hospital is enough to leave ghost stories and different ghosts behind. And then the hospital closed in 2006. So ghostly reports include the full spectrum of ghostly activities: screams, shadowy figures, disembodied footsteps, unexplained noises, and moving objects are all typical sightings in this general area. The 2 areas of the hospital that are supposed to be the most haunted are the morgue and this network of tunnels that network themselves underneath the hospital. Blood-like stains randomly appear, found on the floor of the exam room in the morgue without any logical cause. They disappear then later on. Meanwhile, in the tunnels, shadowy figures are also the norm. A lot of people see shadowy figures floating and wandering around in these tunnels. And then several years ago, a TV show was there doing a ghost investigation, and they actually heard ghosts or the disembodied voices of whispering the names of various people throughout the hallways and on the cemetery grounds. So the Harrisburg State Hospital Cemetery is a very, very crazy paranormal area. And again, it's only 25 miles from where you're at, so might be worth you going over there and investigating one of these days.
Yeah, I would love to go. I've made some friends recently, and let's see if things start to move now.
Well, there, like we talked the haunted taverns and the haunted cemeteries now, and different restaurants and all that we talked about over the last several months. There's really quite a few really crazy paranormal areas right there in the central Pennsylvania area, and a lot more that we didn't even mention. So it will definitely keep you busy for a while trying to investigate this stuff, just in a local area that you're at.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we moved to Pennsylvania. I used to live in Puerto Rico, by the way, to any of the audience that don't know me. And that is what got me really pumped when my hubby said, "We're going to Pennsylvania." I'm like, yes, I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So, Randy, thank you for popping up again with all these
Oh,
awesome stories and history of the local Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is so beautiful and so much rich history. I love it.
yeah.
These podcasts we've been doing, it's given me a lot of like inspo and ideas to like maybe even in the future break up what we've done into more videos of me going in person, like I've said. But I need the people. So
Oh, yeah.
the trip I did this weekend, I met a lot of like paranormal enthusiasts. Um, there's a documentary. I don't know how to say it. He does a lot of documentaries. And Pam, I would like you and her to meet to talk because she knows a lot about that area in Winsboro, which is insane. She was explaining to me that that's the part where the Confederates or where they fought, they retreated. I think that's the area.
Yeah, there
So,
was Civil War. The Confederates did encroach into Pennsylvania, not just in Gettysburg, but a couple other places as well. And there's always I think back to the last podcast we did on haunted taverns. There was a couple of Civil War paranormal entities that had Civil War garb on and all that. So it's definitely something that's fairly common in mostly in the deep South, but in Pennsylvania as well, because of the Civil War battles that were there and the tragic deaths that followed a lot of these battles. Of course,
yeah, it makes sense. It's sad, but it makes sense.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's a crazy story. But yeah, I mean, geez, you got just in the last three podcasts we've done. I mean, you've got over 20 places, and at least 10 of them are only within a less than an hour drive of where you're at.
yeah. I haven't
Right
heard.
there in Lebanon. I mean, the farmers market, the Moonshine Church. A couple places right in that general area. That Hershey place, the tavern up in Hershey there, that's got some crazy ghost stories. So, and also the Franklin House in Schaeferstown, got a lot of ghost stories in there. So, I mean, right off the bat, there'd be four podcasts for you within less than a half an hour drive from where you're at. Some of them only a 5-minute drive from where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna change it up a little bit and go in person and do this in person. That's why
Yeah.
I did the laptop and I'm trying to like get used to this so that I could it'll be a portable setup for me.
Right.
Well,
So
thank you.
yeah, I mean, we'll think about doing some other ones. I got a couple other things in mind, and I'll send you an email on it, and if you want to do it, it'd be fine.
Yeah. Have
I
you
know
ever heard of I'm curious. Have you ever heard of the cemetery in Milwaukee? Any crazy cemeteries? Because that's where I grew up.
probably not, but I'm sure there's definitely there's probably Indian stories there too.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
probably some and like even there in Lebanon, the Moonshine Church, there's been an awful lot of sightings that they talk about that they're Native American people, and who knows what happened in that area before the Europeans came there. It's not documented. Nobody really knows for the most part, and
Yeah, that's why I
what can I
asked you
do?
when I first got here in 2012. I hate this. You're gonna think I'm weird. I am somewhat sensitive psychic, so I'll have things more in my dream, whatever. And I had a very, very vivid dream of this couple, and I think I already said this story. And I didn't know too much yet about the history in Pennsylvania. And I remember in this dream, this man lost his fiancee to a fire or something from an industry factory. It looked like, but it looked very old. It looked like 1900s is what I kept getting in the dream.
Well, that was a common occurrence. There was hardly any safety standards, and very dangerous machinery, and especially in linen mills, a lot of women died in these fires, and they got trapped in there. There wasn't any fire escapes back in those days for the most part. Fire spread. Everything was made out of wood. There was linen and cloth. Just went up like kindling wood, and a lot of people got trapped in there, and unfortunately, they died. And there's a famous one called the Triangle Fire up in New York City, where I forget how many women died, but they were in a linen factory, and this factory went ablaze and just killed a lot of women up there at that one time. And some laws started to change after that, but it took a while because making safety standards and things like that cost these industrialists money, and they want to make more profit than have safety regulations. But finally, the government came in, and things like OSHA got formed, and actually created some laws out there and safety regulations that made the workplace a lot safer than what it was in years past.
Well, thank you, Randy, again for joining me to make the podcast. Maybe one day we could do something in person and visit a place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So let me know when you're coming down to Florida. There's all kinds of crazy stuff here in Florida too. All kinds of
crazy. Love to. My dad's told me some stories. And I have family in Florida, so it'd be nice.
All right, you take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you.
Good weekend.
You too. Bye. And from my side, that was our podcast for today. If you do like what I've been doing and changing up, let me know. That is the plan. I am wanting to go in person, but I would like to go with a group of enthusiasts, and I want the team to be, or the group, whatever, it doesn't have to be, just a good group of friends, to be equally believers and non-believers, so it's fair when we're doing these videos investigations. But I'm not too in a hurry because there's so much people on the internet doing the same thing. I'm looking for a different look into things, and I don't want to do the repeat of the same thing. So just look out for me doing this soon, though, because I have, like Randy said, a lot of information of local history. There's no excuse. Again, thank you for watching this podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed your Halloween and had a nice, safe Halloween trick or treats. Till next time. Bye.